Let's move on to
Yeah. Defensive backs. So don't show it yet. So let me look. Okay, so the top three are clear. There's no ties or anything. So who do you think the top three producers of NFL talent for defensive backs again over the last 10 NFL drafts?
I would say top three. Ohio State is in there for sure. They had a really good run there for one. They still have a good run. Penn State, I would say, is up there. Oregon, Washington, maybe. And then Iowa. Okay, so that's five. Let me cut that down to Michigan would probably have some too. John makes a good point. Let me cut that down to Ohio State, Penn State, and let's say, just to be fun, let's say Iowa.
Okay.
We got John's.
Yeah, so I'm going to point out I'm not going to hit the top three yet. I'd like to see more people give their opinion. Iowa, I will say they're not top three. They're eighth in the Big Ten with 8. So 8 picks, no first rounders. That's tied for 18th in the nation. So good, right? That's if you're tied for 18th, that means you're a top 25 like team for production of that group. So Iowa's good, but not great. Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan. Let me hit on Michigan. They're just outside the top three. They're 4th with 10 picks. And 2 of those are first rounders, which is good. That's good for 10th in the nation for defensive backs. That's good. Very good. What else we got? Illinois, sneaky. Illinois is 10th in the Big Ten. They've produced 6 draft picks, 1 first rounder, tied for 24th in the nation. So it makes them top 25. There you go.
All right. I think that's battle. Oh, Pit Snipe Husker's here. He says, I'm late. My Big Ten brothers. There's some ugly weather coming. Hang in there. Hey, hang in there, Pit Snipe Husker. Hope everything's okay. Appreciate you watching the show, even in the heavy weather. Mish says Wisconsin could be sneaky.
Now, they're not. So so just so you guys know too, my brother went to Wisconsin. I have 3 nephews. They all went to Wisconsin. So I'm from a Wisconsin family. For years, I've been saying one of the biggest problems, they have not had the cornerbacks when they're facing the really talented, skilled teams like Ohio State. They don't have the cornerbacks. They only have 4 defensive back draft picks. That puts them tied for 12th in the Big Ten, along with Purdue and Rutgers. Not good enough. They need to improve that position group. Especially, they could get away with it when you were in the Big Ten West, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, other than Purdue, who was throwing the ball all around, all the offenses were pedestrian. Now that Wisconsin is out and they're playing a more skilled type teams outside of the Big Ten West, they're going to have to shore up that group for sure.
Sky Upon says USC.
Yeah, they're good. They're 7th in the Big Ten. Actually, tied for 5th in the Big Ten. Sorry. So 9 picks. Why don't we bring up the table here since we're going into detail? USC is tied for 14th in the nation with 9 picks, and that's good for tied for 5th in the Big Ten. So you can see. So this one is the most interesting, JR. So Penn State.
I love seeing Washington up there. That is awesome.
What? Yeah, I'll get to them in a second. But Penn State leads the Big Ten with 14 total picks. So they're the kings of defensive backs in the Big Ten, right? Well, wait a minute. Not so fast, my friend, as Mr. Lee Corso would say. Hate to see that he's not going to do it anymore. Penn State has 0 first-round picks of those 14 draft picks that are defensive backs. Ohio State is tied for 2nd with 12, but they have 7 first-round picks. I'm sorry, but I would have to declare Ohio State kings. The 7 first-round picks to Penn State 0 trumps in my book. And if I had to label a kings of the defensive backs in the Big Ten, I'd have to give it to Ohio State.
I over the 10-year period, sure, but Penn State's got 6 guys drafted in the past 3 drafts.
Ohio State has 0.
None. I mean, ever since Kerry Combs took over as the DC, and then Jim Knowles took over after him. But I will say, Jim Knowles and them, they kind of accumulated that talent and kept it there. So, that's not exactly
So,
Uh,
so
a
JR, I did a not so fast,
jab
my
on that.
friends, and you did a not so fast, my friends, one upping me again. Is that what you just did?
Yeah,
I,
yeah, we
I hear you.
back to
So
back.
that's a great point. I was going to point out 6 picks the last 3 years for Penn State, 0 for Ohio State. Now there's pent up. There's going to be probably 3 picks this draft for Ohio State, right? They're going to have Hancock and the starting cornerback, and then the
Hancock,
other
Burke,
safety,
Latham,
Ransom. And yeah,
Ransom.
those will be 3. Burke. All 3 will get drafted. But anyway, the surprise was Washington, though. 12 picks, so tied with Ohio State, and 2 first rounders, right? That's tied for 6th in the nation for Washington, Ohio State. Penn State is 3rd in the nation. So this is really good. Michigan has done very well. 10 overall picks, 2 first rounders for 10th best in the nation. And they've had 1 pick each of the last 6 years, and that's going to continue for sure in this year's draft as well. So very impressive stuff. Oregon's right there, tied for 14th. So there's 3 teams with 9. It's Oregon, Minnesota, and USC. So Minnesota's been disappointing in some areas, but in defensive backs, they've been really impressive. Think about that. 9 right there with an Oregon and USC is Minnesota. That's really impressive.
Yeah,
Again,
we've mentioned Minnesota has had really good safety play over the
yeah,
years. PJ Fleck has done a good job with safety play. I contend a couple years ago, Tyler Nubin and who was that other safety they had? That was one of the best safety duos in the nation. They just never
well,
got credit for it.
they had
But that
Antoine
was one of the
Winfield
best duos.
Jr. Antoine Winfield Jr.,
Yeah, and Anton Winfield Jr. Yeah, yeah.
who's
I think he
balling
was
it
right.
out for Tampa Bay, right?
And now they got Coy Parrish, and Coy Parrish is the next Travis Hunter. So you heard it here first. I saw somebody tweet that the other day. I just want to let you know that started here first. So if it happens, give the Big Ten Huddle credit, even though
That's like
Jeff's sighing right now.
when the Florida people said, "Oh, that guy did great in the spring game. We have the next Jeremiah Smith." It's like, okay, slow your roll here, people. Come
Yeah.
on.
I do think this comment from Tony is really cool. Washington had 3 Pro Bowl DBs in the NFL last year. I believe he's listing them here, but a
Yeah,
Baker, Byron Murphy, and Trent McDuffie. Yeah, very cool.
yeah, yeah. But Byron Murphy went 2nd round. Yeah, there's a bunch of them in here. Marcus Peters was the highest one for Tony there, just so you know. Let's see
Very
here.
cool.
What bottom feeders, Nebraska, Indiana again with 1, Nebraska low. UCLA was pretty low here. What else stands out here? So defense. Oh, so Alabama is number 1, by the way, with 18. Their factory. And,
It's not
and it
surprising.
makes sense. Nick Saban's his position group that he helped coach, even as a head coach, was defensive backs. That was his specialty. You can expect Bama's defensive backs to decline greatly under DeBoer. Not that DeBoer's bad, but just and
No,
I'll tell you this, JR. This is why Caleb Downs went to Alabama. I went to the national championship game and I met Caleb Downs' mother after because I hung around late after. I talked to her and I thanked her for her son going to Ohio State. And she said, well, he would have went to Ohio State if it wasn't for he wanted to play for Nick Saban because he coached defensive backs. She said once Saban retired, she said they knew he was going to Ohio State. There was no question. This came from his mom. True story there. You're learning a lot about me here, JR. This is good stuff. I'm a troublemaker on spring break and I meet, famous athletes' parents too. So
You got sources, Jeff.
yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
All right. Let's see. Any others we want to comment on? Like you said, Illinois, they're in the middle of the pack. Maryland is kind of surprising there lately. 1, 2, and 1. Give them their
Yeah.
credit. 2 first-round picks for them. Anything you want to say on Maryland before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, Maryland, they're one of those middle of the packers, but they're higher in the middle of the pack usually. So it supports that narrative. Maryland has a lot of good talent, and then Virginia, DC, that whole area, they've managed to not just for Loxley, but prior coaches, in fact, under Durkin, et cetera, they've recruited well, developed pretty well, but just haven't seen. Probably could expect better results than they've had, but definitely a middle of the pack team when it comes to production of a talent, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it's hard to beat top 5, 6 when you're talking blue bloods that the Big Ten has, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All
True.
right.